In Star Wars and in most things, everything builds on itself. But there's one thing that I know doesn't, and that is the sequels. In short, the sequels tore down everything that the previous movies and shows built. Now, to clarify, I believe that The Force Awakens is a 7 out of 10 movie. I by no means think it's bad. I actually really like it, and is by far the best of the sequels, but I think the last two really sewed the pants that were perfectly woven for them. I'll start with the characters. Luke's entire journey was destroyed. The entire redeeming moment of Luke and his journey through the galaxy ends with Anakin reconciling with Luke. Every mistake that Anakin made, every fear that he had, was destroyed with the rise of Luke. But the prequels completely undo this. Luke is turned into a villain of sorts, who gave up on his meaning, which was correcting his father and keeping the galaxy at some sort of peace. But he doesn't do that. Rather, he has a scary nightmare leading to him attempting to kill his own nephew, which then led to Kylo somehow slaughtering every Jedi known to man, even after they rebuilt a whole new order. Tell me how that makes sense. It doesn't. And that is what I'm so heavily disappointed in. Moving on to Rey, they did a copy and paste of Luke. Lived with non biological parents, tapped into an unknown force powers, joined a weak rebellious group, attempting to defeat an evil father. That is slightly broad, but it is essentially the main point. The entire reason the rebellion began was because they wanted to create a new republic and bring peace to the galaxy. But all of that goes down the drain. The new republic is turned into a little puppy that can't beat the big bad First Order, which doesn't make sense when you remember they quite literally defeated the Empire, which ruled practically the entire galaxy. Yet they turn into a coughing baby just a short time later? That's entirely out of reality, especially since the best of the New Republic joined the Resistance, like Leia and Akbar. It just doesn't make sense, and this draws back to Disney copying George Lucas' story like Mr. Iceman. The odds are against the main characters, they have no support, but they have to make it work because justice must prevail. But that already happened. It's such a copy of the original trilogy. I mean, they even copied the Death Star with a Starkiller base. Luke was supposed to be the one Jedi to bring back the Order, but that's exactly what Rey is supposed to do now in the future movies. Apparently, nothing can be new in Star Wars and everything has to be recycled. That's why I love the prequels so much. First, they are creative, and second, it doesn't rely on this imbalance in power as the entire plot. In the Clone Wars, the balance was quite even, and you could even say the Republic was stronger throughout most of it, and that is shown through their victory. The protagonists of a story don't have to be weak, they don't have to be the underdog. Challenges can come even though you are stronger than the challenge. That's what the New Republic should have been. They should have had to fix the decay to the galaxy's trust that was created by the Empire. The Empire destroyed the trust of the people in a sole government. There were also planets that still had trust in the Empire since they never got burned by the Empire's power. That's what is happening in all of the Disney live action shows. But the sequels just wasted all that potential and turned what the entirety of the originals worked for, which was a new republic for the galaxy, into a weak entity which immediately gets disabled and now is up to small force to defeat a new rising empire. We already saw that, and that just makes it sad because all of that is gone now. I'd be a fool not to admit that The Force Awakens had potential. I didn't really like Han's death and his change, but there was still some good stuff. I still believe that they could have created a solid new trilogy, but no, they can't even do that. This can be perfectly seen through the character Finn, who had so much potential. Before we delve deeper, I just want to say I feel bad for John Boyega because to me, he's by far one of the best actors in the sequels. But all of his potential to be the next best character in Star Wars is gone. He showed us with his change in the First Order soldier to a bastion of hope in the Resistance that redemption is possible in most instances, and even though your circumstances hold you back from being a light in your world, you shouldn't give up. But all that doesn't matter because they gave him nothing. They gave all the cake to Rey and Kylo, and Poe and Finn got nothing. Finn doesn't have any meaning in the last two movies. Poe doesn't change at all, and there wasn't much for him besides becoming the leader of the Resistance fleet. Although I'm not a fan of main characters having force powers for no reason, like Sabine, I still think that they could have handed Finn the reins. I feel like Finn is just as much, or perhaps more, deserving of that ability compared to Rey. Although I think Daisy Ridley wasn't really a great actor in the sequels, I still think she could portray Rey. The thing is that they have to tweak her entire background. She has stuff handed to her way too much, and that's what makes her undeserving of the main character stage. Rey beats a trained Sith in Kylo Ren, and that's just one example of many where she easily conquers the troubles that go her way. It has always been said that Rey is a bit of a Mary Sue, that being a character that never faced struggles and was immediately insanely powerful and successful. Now, Luke was most definitely a Mary Sue in the originals, but definitely to a lesser extent. Again, all this draws back to the greater problem of the sequels failing to build on themselves. Instead, they chop themselves down. One of the biggest sins I think the sequels had was splitting the original crew of Luke, Leia, and Han. It doesn't make sense that Leia turned Han into a respectable man, even though all he knew was smuggling and money. Yet now Han and Chewie leave for what reason? I mean, he has a kid now, and a wife, and he leaves to smuggle again? And why is Luke just a terrible guy who doesn't have the balls to take care of the galaxy, even though he defeated the Empire and fought the most powerful being in the galaxy in Darth Vader? And he still decides to isolate himself even after he technically created this mess by making Kylo into a villain. Moving on to Kylo, he has so much aura in the first bit of The Force Awakens, but that dies as soon as he meets Rey, who technically beats him in a duel, and then for the rest of the movies, he's practically a toddler always whining and failing at everything he does. He had so much potential, but again, Disney fails to build itself up or even use previous bases. Lastly, I just want to talk about the continuity of the sequels. Firstly, when Rey and Finn are on Jakku, they stumble upon the Millennium Falcon. Like, how did that even get there? We have no explanation. The next biggest one that comes to mind is when they are on Starkiller Base and they fire a laser. First of all, it shouldn't be able to split up into a bunch of different lasers to hit multiple planets. And second of all, why are the soldiers on Starkiller Base not getting melted by the heat? I'm not even going to talk about The Last Jedi because practically the entire movie is flawed. I might do a future video on that. But the biggest thing in The Rise of Skywalker that bothers me is that TIE fighters can all of a sudden jump to hyperspace. When could that happen, and how are they jumping to the exact same spot as our protagonists? The sequels could explain stuff, but they choose not to. The next problem is the lack of presence by the Knights of Ren, who canonically helped Kylo turn evil. Yet they are apparently too lazy to actually do anything in these movies, besides dying to Kylo in like 20 seconds. The entire ending of Rise of Skywalker is subpar besides the battle. I might sound like a loser, but when the reinforcements came, I felt that in my soul. Because it came full circle in that moment. But that immediately went away as soon as I see Rey and Kylo being a bunch of Sigmas fighting Palpatine. The whole point of fighting Palpatine is not to kill him because then you have done what he wants you to do. What should have happened is that either Rey or Kylo, I would prefer Rey, because using Kylo would be too similar to the originals. But anyways, Rey kills Palpatine on behalf of Kylo, meaning that she, to our knowledge, ends the Palpatine lineage, and by proxy, fully redeeming the true Skywalker family through Kylo slash Ben Solo. I would much rather have Kylo rebuild the Jedi Order simply because he is most definitely more wise and simply because he turned away from the dark side. That's about it for the video. I guess I would say that the sequels just failed to build on themselves, and I know that sounds kind of negative. And yeah, it's kind of sad because I like Star Wars. It's probably my favorite piece of media. I like Avatar too, but yeah, Star Wars is by far my favorite piece of media. And to me, it just it's kind of sad, but like I know it's negative, but you also have to call out the flaws. And I feel like if you call out the flaws, it makes the series better. Now they're probably not going to hear this, but I feel like it's good to express yourself. Um, yeah, and I'll just say like I'm probably going to be trying to do some more positive content on Star Wars. My last video was positive, so I want to keep things in balance, just like the Force is supposed to be. That's the double meaning right there.